Welcome to Learning Horizons, a series dedicated to reimagine learning, communicating, and collaborating in remote and hybrid workplace. What is possible? What could be done differently? And what could we do to ignite creativity and performance? I'm Gail Watson, your host, and today we are going to discuss psychological safety. What does it look like for remote and dispersed team? And our guest is Lydia Charilaou, who I have known for over 5 years. And I love your passion, Lydia, your energy and your courage. I believe you've been in HR and L&D for over 15 years, and your purpose is to support businesses, develop inclusive, high-trust culture, which are scalable. And you're defining yourself proudly as neurodivergent, making it a strength of yours, and we might touch on it in a moment. Trust is something that resonates with the work I do at ThinkSkills around improving collaborations for remote and dispersed teams. And we're both united by the will of creating a fairer and more equitable workplace. Welcome, Lydia.
Hi, Gail. Thank you so much for having me on the episode today. I'm really looking forward to talking about this topic, which is very close to my heart.
Thank you so much. And well, let's get started. I would be curious to hear your definitions of psychological safety and, more importantly, why it matters.
Absolutely. So for those of you who are listening who might know me, or if you're looking me up on LinkedIn, you will know that I had a stint in my last role in the FMCG industry. So I'm going to use a kitchen analogy to talk about what psychological safety means, the good and perhaps the not so good side of it. So imagine for a minute you're in a kitchen and you've got a chef and a sous chef and everyone is working together. So everyone knows their station, everyone communicates what the next step is. And, ultimately all of this picture, if you can imagine, ends up with some amazing recipes that go out to the customer and everyone's happy. So for me, psychological safety is about everyone having a voice, everyone having clarity, what the expectations are, everyone knowing that when they work in collaboration and harmony, only good things can come from that. I don't know if that makes sense to you, but that's the picture.
I like it. It's actually very practical in a way that it is clarity of expectations. So it's a lot of clarity, not about emotions to start with, isn't it?
Yeah. So also imagine those of you who might know Gordon Ramsay's nightmare kitchens or kitchen nightmares. So he's shouting and screaming a lot. People are dropping plates. Everything's getting burnt. The customers are complaining. And so for me, that is what happens. So if we talk about the risks of not creating an environment where things are clear, how we work together, where we collaborate, where we communicate, where everything is working in harmony, the opposite is absolute destruction. So think about that in the workplace. What happens when you have a team and no one is, you're not giving feedback to each other about, this is the part of the project that I'm doing. And then when I finish, your part comes in. I'm oversimplifying, right? But, this is your part comes in. So we know you speak to the client, you say this, the marketing department do that. But ultimately, the good kitchen would have had that communication and, ended up with what the customer wants. Whereas the kitchen nightmare burns everything and, no one's happy. No one's happy in the kitchen, the employees, and no one's happy, the customers like on the outside. Mm-hmm. So I just want to describe, something that may be a little bit fun and, playful for me, what psychological safety is. So there's trust in the first kitchen, there's clarity, there's communication, open communication, collaboration. There's also respect in everyone's role and abilities and capabilities. And on the flip side, it's absolute chaos.
So it's a very visual representation. So thank you very much. So what you're saying is that to have psychological safety, it needs to be a clarity of process, correct?
There is a part of that, absolutely. I mean, clarity generally, right? There, yes, for process, but also when we talk about clarity, it might be about what is our end goal. So if you imagine an organization that doesn't have clarity on what they're driving to. So a prime example, in many of my roles in the past, I was in charge of performance management for the organization. And how many times did I have conversations with leaders with, you're setting goals for your team, but what is the end goal? So what are they all striving to? Why? Simon
Yes.
Sinek, right? So why are they doing this? And 9 times out of 10, it was like, well, because that's their job to complete the task, right? So, clarity is many things. Of course, yes, process is one of those things.
Excellent. So I can see the clarity of purpose, sense of purpose, clarity of
Yes.
goals, and clarity of role functions and how they all work together through the process. So there are a
Yeah.
lot more element of that. And clarity also of, I guess, quality, of quality assurance, what the outcome, what the standards from the outcome.
100%. Okay, I totally agree. And I think for me, the bottom line for that, because I'm a type of person that always looks underneath the bonnet, right? I don't want to look at what the symptoms are, what the things that might look like on the outside. I really want to dig deep with my clients to look at what is truly happening there. Ultimately, every one of us, right, fundamentally wants to feel that they are adding value and they are being valued. So underneath all of those clarity, communication, whatever, is like, and purpose, obviously, you already mentioned is big. So, do I have purpose? And am I adding value? Do I feel that people are giving me feedback that I am valued? They're just basic fundamental needs that if you think about safety in a kind of operations, manufacturing department or in a factory, there's basic fundamental needs that people need to have in place to make sure that they don't harm themselves. Psychological safety is the same, just for the emotional, behavioral part of who we are as human beings.
That is excellent, and it brings a lot of clarity about what it is. Is there some symptoms, because you talked about the nightmare kitchen, but if you look, for example, in the current workplace, to teams that may not be working under the same roof and spend a lot of time on digital, even if they're in one workplace, what would be the symptoms of that possible lack of psychological safety?
Well, interestingly, my recent masterclass, which I'll drop in the link for people to access, I talked about the number one risk in any team, but this will be relevant especially for remote teams working remotely, because they obviously don't have that 3D personal effect. It's not the shouting and screaming often on the side of it, but it's the quiet disengagement. So let me bring that to life a little bit. You are hosting Teams or Zoom meetings or whatever platform you're using with your teams to get in touch. And you've got a new team and everyone's excited and they're giving feedback and they're communicating, and that's the start of the relationship. Or you bring a new person in and you see that from them at the beginning. And then as time goes on, the people that have been openly engaging, their opinions are not validated, or the feedback is not welcomed, or they're not being asked any questions or whatever it is. So slowly, that person starts disengaging, right? And I think that just to add the layer, it's often that quiet disengagement risk that is the biggest risk in toxic work environments. Now, if you layer that on top with working remotely, where you're not then physically being in the same room as someone to pick up on body language as much as you could do on your screen, then that is a higher risk, because all you're seeing is, like, we're having this conversation now, and someone can put a smile on their face and pretend and come across a certain way. And it takes a certain type of person to be intuitive enough or have the emotional IQ to pick up on those subtle signs that someone is quietly and slowly disengaging. Compared to, for example, if you're in a physical environment and you were in the set, someone was sitting next to you, you might notice, not always, because this has also happened to me, but you are, I guess, more likely to notice if someone, I don't know, is showing up late when they're normally on time, or they're quieter in a meeting because you can actually look around and see them, or they appear quite tearful, or there's something in their demeanor that's just a little bit more wilted than the normal. So there are higher risks for this quiet, well, not for the quiet disengagement, but to notice the quiet disengagement. That's the part that's the higher risk when you are working remotely. And so let's tip it on its head. What can we do? Because we're here to hopefully bring some ideas and solutions as to, what to do in these situations. Some simple, open, honest communication. So be mindful when you have people that perhaps have been quieter in your meeting, whether it's a one-to-one meeting, whether it's in group meetings, whether you're doing a social activity online, be mindful when somebody has changed their demeanor, and then reach out to them. Send them I would, first of all, email would not be my first and preferred method. I would try to get them on a call. It might be on a voice call, because you might think it might be easier for them to have that rather than see you. Then you might want to go to a Teams video meeting. You might want to drop them a voice note, something so that they can hear the emotion in your voice when you say, hey, I noticed that you're a little bit quieter in X meeting, Y meeting, or I noticed that you weren't your normal bubbly self, or whatever the situation is. I just wanted to reach out and see if there's anything that you'd like to speak to me about, or is there anything I can do, or just keep that. And when it might not be that someone feels totally comfortable doing it, so just keep that light touch, but let them know that you're there, and keep that communication line open. And if you notice that it's happening a lot, then perhaps there's an opportunity to, if that person is working near you, see if they wanted to meet up for a coffee. Even though you're working remotely, it might not always be available, but I guess offer options, and just come across as a human being first. That's the first thing. Yeah.
That's very good. Thank you very much, and I love your practical approach about the challenge, the quiet disengagement. Something I will first note is that I think was it the Gallup survey, the latest Gallup report, that pointed out that the level of disengagement of teams, and particularly of middle managers, is growing. So I think it's 21% of highly disengaged people in the workplace. So it's definitely something that you've identified, and there's been evidence it's happening in the workplace. And as you said, it's harder to to get the cues right in the remote environment, especially if someone is doing it in a settled way, because they will obviously maybe not turn on their webcam. So the digital body language is settled, right? They may not ignore a message, but they might just respond with a thumbs up, or you can see lesson communications, like slightly looser, slightly more neutral, with less opinions maybe, or less level of care. And it's a lot harder to pick up in the digital workplace than it is, as you said, in the workplace. Also because you are together for 6 hours, right, in the workplace. So it's really hard to fake for 6 hours consistently, whether, if it's just a few meetings or some digital communications, it's feasible to a certain extent. And I like the fact that you also identified intentionality, that as a leader, we have to be spend a lot more time thinking about what we're observing, and maybe have a lot more reflexive times, because we could miss the cues. So we really have to pause and think, okay, what's happened in the meeting? Okay, who contributed, who didn't, or who volunteered idea? It's kind of this pause and reflect, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think for the person who is, and that's not necessarily only the leader, the person that's hosting the meeting, right? Because people could take turns, so that's another thing as well. And peer-to-peer can also bring this up, of course. So let's not put all of the onus on the leader. I mean, they have a big role to play as well. But it might be something about learning some basic or fundamental facilitation skills, which are when the base things that you learn as you start training for the first time. When you've got some people that are very vocal and others are not, try to bring them into the conversation, right? Great, John, Harry, Mary, we've got some fantastic ideas from you. We'd also like to hear from Bob here, because we want to have diversity of opinion. So bring people into the conversation, because I think often, and I've been on these meetings, so many times, and sometimes you think to yourself, oh, I just can't, there's no point me saying anything anymore because my voice is not being heard. So you just sit there not saying something. And I have no poker face, so I've been told this, like basically everything I'm thinking is on my face, even though I'm silent, but that's a different point. Or actually maybe the same, because we'll come, maybe because we spoke a little about neurodivergent employees, and so I will come back to that slightly with the non-poker face. But I think that it's important to bring to have opportunities to bring people into the discussion, and by doing that you might prompt people to open up a little bit more, depending on what the situation is.
That's really good. I also like your comment about the fact that you said, well, it's not always on the leaders, all is not on the leader or the manager, or the person in charge of the group. And as something I wanted to maybe drill a little bit more, how do you give ownership of the collaboration, the collective, to the entire team, and doesn't make it this kind of star-shaped system where everything goes to the leader and comes out of it?
Well, I think that it's the topic we're talking about. 100% is creating an environment where everyone's opinions are encouraged to a certain, I mean, not to a certain extent, within the parameters of the workplace, right? Everyone feels that their opinions are valued, that they're, they will be part of the decision making. So what I mean by that, it doesn't mean necessarily they're all going to be, in that position with a leader making the decision at the last decision, but they know that they've contributed, I guess that's the right word, to give their opinions, thoughts, ideas towards making the final decision. So in an environment where you're meeting with clients, let's just say you're client facing, and you have a senior VP of sales or whatever, and you're you've got some key accounts, and you're of course the point of contact with the client. Is there an opportunity to bring in a more junior person to help them, I guess, watch what you're doing, and then be able afterwards to sit and do some mentoring? And I noticed you did this, that what was the response in that situation? How did that happen? So you're creating an environment where you're trusting the junior person to come into your account with the client, number one, so the person feels valued. You're also opening up this environment where people can ask you questions about the situation. You can give them feedback, and also maybe layer it on top with potential reverse mentoring. So by creating this environment where everyone is open to share, everyone can have feedback, there's no blockers about I'm more senior, you shouldn't have access to this. And I mean, I've many times been in HR careers in the past where perhaps I've gone in a learning and development role and not an HR role. And I've had comments that, oh, well, you don't need to see the people's salaries for your role. And immediately you think, well, I'm part of this team, and ultimately it's about what I did a lot of it at the time was about creating fairness, right? So it's a lot about data, having a look at these things. And if you're blocking someone from part of a role, it's not their direct role, but having access to information so that they can help build learning and development initiatives that are going to help certain people, that are going to create fairness. It's just thinking that laterally rather than siloing people into situation like, that's you can't have access to anything else, that's me. Coming back to the kitchen analogy, everyone did have their different role, but the communication was open because ultimately they all had a small part of the next person's role, which was communicating, hey, there's 2 minutes on these seared scallops. Where's the plates? Can you get the plates for me? The plates are ready there. Then they're moving on plating. It's a well-oiled machine, because the key is communication and creating that environment where everyone knows that it's working towards a common goal. I don't know if it makes sense. I've got
Absolutely, it does. And I think, when we were talking a little bit on the situation with a siloed environment, which is amplified probably by remote working, where not only you're siloed in, like, as a team, you're probably siloed, but within each individual, you're siloed as well, because, can I call this person? Will I bother them? What am I stepping out of the line? So basically what you are describing is a place where people have sufficient clarity to be confident that if they reach out with a purpose and in a professional manners, it's okay, isn't it? It's okay to step out, which lead me to probably my next point, which is asking you about what can be done when I would say a team stop having this trust element, when what can be done to reverse, because trust is hard to gain but very easy to break, and then it's quite hard to go back.
Oof. Heavy hitting topic. I don't think there is a magic wand or that someone can wave and magically change things. I think that you rightly said, it takes time. It's about trying to find out what, you have a remote team, right? It's about getting to know each person, getting to know what their needs are with regards to working style and accessibility rights. So I'll bring that in a little bit as well. And then having that open communication and having an open door policy as such, where people know that they can bring these challenges or situations to yourself. Lead with empathy. So that means be a human first. If you're noticing things that aren't working out, rather than going to the problem, what's the problem, more about, is there something here that we can talk about? What help can I give? Are the kind of fundamental things. And I think that to repair a relationship is listening to those answers and trying to help and try to rebuild that relationship. Brilliant. Which takes time. Yeah. So I alluded to a few things. I just wanted to come back to a few things that I mentioned. So I openly talk about this on LinkedIn, so it's not new. So last year I found out that I displayed both autistic and ADHD symptoms. So the combination, as you can imagine, is very exciting. And I have been talking a lot with other people that I've been meeting over the past few years about accessibility rights and what we can do to help people with disabilities, seen and unseen. So I alluded to the fact that I have no poker face earlier. So it's very easy for someone who's in a meeting with me that maybe has a regular meeting with me. Every Tuesday we have a meeting, or we have a group meeting, and you see me every Tuesday, right? So you know what I'm like normally. You will know if there's something wrong, because I have absolutely no poker face. And this display of what others might feel or looks like disinterest or disgust might also just be me thinking about something, pondering. I'm like, not sure I agree, but I'm thinking along, but my face might say something different. So I think it is also important to understand and to educate ourselves about the different people and different ways that people present and different ways that people communicate and different needs people have, and be mindful of that, especially in the working remotely. I met someone at a conference a couple of weeks ago, and we were talking about something simple, right? Something that can be quite simple that I guess isn't really, in my experience, considered always. So if you have someone in your team who is deaf or hard of hearing, making sure that you have subtitles in your team meetings, right? However, on the flip side, if you also have a slide that has a lot of information and graphs and stats and whatever, and then you have the subtitles, it can be quite distracting. So I can see that because this person I spoke to brought this up, and they said, these two things. And then I thought, well, actually, for me as a neurodivergent person, if there were subtitles on the screen, my brain would be going, oh, let me read those things there, because I get easily distracted about things. So it's ask the questions. What do you need to thrive in this situation? You might not know what you need right now. So if something changes, let us know. What can we do to adapt the situation? How can we make sure that it's not always the same mode? So I met with a company several months ago who had created this platform where it was based on NASA research that they did for, it was like really, but then they brought it into the workplace, and they basically showed that for a team meeting where, and again, I'm generalizing, neurodivergent people might have different communication needs to neurotypical people. They had segments where the question for the meeting was asked and everyone typed in their answers, right? So there was no video, no audio option. Everyone was typing it in. So everyone got a chance to put their point of view across in that mode. And then another segment was that they had video and communicated. So it just gives options, I guess. So coming back to psychological safety, 100% asking your people what they need and trying to find alternative ways to work. Again, like I said, so much more important with virtual teams or remote teams, because one size doesn't fit all.
Absolutely. I just would like to make sure we've got it right. I've got it right, and I understood right. There is something that is a little bit the path, I would say, around all the questions we've discussed. It's about listening and asking questions. It's something that I've come back regularly through all the, all our conversation, all the question I ask, having the curiosity to double check. So taking the time once again to have conversations, individual conversations, group conversations. Do you agree that absolutely is one of the key skills when leading a team, especially remote?
Absolutely, yes, and that obviously has lots of layers underneath it, right? Like we said. So what is going to work best for one person isn't going to work for another. So if another simple example, you have team meetings at 9 a.m. on Monday every week, right? That doesn't work for everyone. That is the worst time for me. A 9 a.m. Monday morning meeting is, I am not going to be my best self, right? And to have that psychological safety to say to the person that's organizing it, because like we said, it's not necessarily the leader, you know what, for this and this reason, feeling safe to say, I don't function my best at this time. Is there another way we can move this to a different time? And then you ask other people as well. So maybe you do a poll and just say, hey, we want to have this team meeting once every week. Let's vote and obviously go with majority. And then also, why don't we alternate? So why do we always have to have it Monday morning at 9 a.m.? Why can't we have, 1 week it's that time, and then we say, okay, it's only for 1 week. So I'll go, okay, it's only for 1 week. I'll deal with it and then come back to do it a different time. So it's just, having that flexibility. Again, that's a big thing. So yes, communication, listening, flexibility, agility, empathy are the, 4 key things. These are the ones that straight away spring into my mind.
That is wonderful. We could carry on talking, I think, for the whole day, and we would both love it. I'm not sure the people watching the recording, our audience, would love it as much. I'm sure they will, but they might run out of time, because we know time is our most precious currency. There is one thing that I was hoping to ask you. It's a link between psychological safety and performance. Is there any resource, any research, or any experience or evidence that demonstrates that there is a link?
Well, you're putting me on the spot now. I'm sure there is research that does, and I will have to come back and share specifically about that. My brain today is not pinging the specific thing, but I think just based on my experience as an HR person, rather than actual statistics,
Yes.
which I'm sure I can back up later on, is that when you have an environment where people feel safe, things we've been saying, to bring their opinions and thoughts, then there is higher productivity levels. So I give an example in my masterclass, and I talk about an employee that has, in the situation we spoke about earlier, which they have felt over the weeks and months that they're not being listened to, they're not valued, etc. So they're feeling quite disengaged. And then they're speaking to a customer about a complaint, right? And so then I talk about, well, how well do you think that person is going to represent your brand and to your customer? So the performance part of an employee has a direct impact to your customer, to the you know, whether they're going to do business with you again, and how they're going to be talking about your brand. So there is a lot of information out there about the link of, you know, creating a safe environment and then higher productivity levels. But my experience is, as a human being, yeah, you're nice to people, they're going to be nice back. You're not nice to people, then you're probably going to get a different end result.
Thank you so much. Well, interestingly, I was listening to a French podcast recently, and they were mentioning that it was a well-known French university thing that they haven't been able to back in research that diversity was directly linked, like a growing diversity in an organization was a directly linked to performance. However, I say that the counterpart is that, like, you know, if you are enabling diversity, then in the other hand, you're opening, you know, your talent pool. So even though there is no necessarily a measurable evidence outcome, you're making your life a little bit easier if you create a culture that allow you to tap in a larger pool of people as an organization. So I found it quite interesting.
So there
yes,
is actually on that point, because now we're flipping into a slightly different angle. There is research that was done in 2017, and again, the researcher's name escaped me, a woman, so I will put it in the show notes. And they basically did A/B testing. So they basically said, right, let's put a group of people together from all these diverse backgrounds to do the activity, A. And then B, let's put a group of people together that are diverse from, I'm going to call them external characteristics, age, ethnicity, demographics, you know, whatever. But they're all have the same kind of way of working, thinking. So the research was done in our research and development area. So you have the one group that are diverse from external characteristics and cognitive dissonance. And then you have another group that are externally, you know, demographics kind of diverse, but they're all either been to the same university, done the same degree, in the same circles. And this research found that the group, the first group that had the difference in cognitive diversity outperformed the one that they were diverse from the demographics, but cognitively similar in their position on the topic. So when we talk about diversity, and this is something that openly people say, oh, bring diverse employees into place and then you will have diversity of opinion. This particular research said that actually it goes deeper than that. And it's about looking at the diverse, you know, the people that's not just externally demographics different, and also that they're coming from things from a different angle. So they think differently.
That is wonderful. And I like the fact that, you know, there is diverse views on the topic, but also there is a practical approach to do things right that is likely to have a good impact, a better impact on a team. And it's what you described, you know, through the process, that you need to have clarity from the start, clarity on why we're doing what we're doing, how we're doing things, who is doing what, and then once we've got this clarity, then we can open to make people be their best possible self and encourage them to step out of the line a little bit, to be curious, to ask questions, and frame that in a positive way. So I think there are a lot to take away from this session. So Lydia, thank you so much. Well, we could have carried on, so I'm sure they're going to have opportunity to have you back on the topic.
My pleasure, whenever.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.